up as a kid. All a nigga wanna have was a Burberry scarf and $3 in my pocket. Instead I got beat with a switch, but I don't give a fuck, but it's on my body. Scars all up on me, but I run around from
Podcast off with some breaking news. So the breaking news is that the Pittsburgh Steelers have just released former Ohio State quarterback JT Barrett. Now, if you guys don't recall, I made a video a couple of months ago talking about could JT Barrett potentially be the future at the quarterback position for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, this was really just a video that randomly came to my head because I remember watching JT Barrett play at Ohio State. He's actually one of the best quarterbacks to ever play at Ohio State. And I was asking, could he potentially be the guy who could be the successor once Ben Roethlisberger steps down, given how bad the quarterback play was for Pittsburgh last year between Mason Rudolph and Devlin Duck Hodges? Then I came to the conclusion that I would like to see what JT Barrett could do in the preseason, but ultimately I didn't really think he was going to end up making the roster. Well, with the ongoing pandemic that's going on and us not having the NFL preseason, teams were forced to trim their rosters down to 80 players. And unfortunately, while the Steelers were trimming their roster down to that 80 player limit, they had to release JT Barrett. And I'm a little bit disappointed that the Steelers released JT Barrett this early. I mean, I would have liked to see what JT Barrett would have done for the Pittsburgh Steelers during training camp. And when you look at the Steelers and what went behind this decision, they probably had to choose between Paxton Lynch and JT Barrett. And JT Barrett was the guy that they opted to release. And I really can't blame them because when you look at Paxton Lynch last year for the Seattle Seahawks was in the quarterback battle for that backup spot behind Russell Wilson, and he was competing with Geno Smith, and both those guys had a really good preseason for Seattle. It was a really tightly contested battle, but ultimately Geno Smith was able to win out. But I mean, Paxton Lynch was really solid for Seattle, and when you look at Paxton Lynch, he has all the physical tools to be successful in the Steelers offense. He has great size. He also has a really strong arm as well, so he is the guy who could potentially push Devlin Duck Hodges for that third quarterback spot, and then maybe if he ends up beating out Devlin Hodges for that third QB spot, he could end up competing for that backup quarterback spot behind Ben Roethlisberger with Mason Rudolph, depending on how things go. But I mean, really unfortunate for JT Barrett. I mean, when you look at what JT Barrett did for Seattle, he didn't really have a lot of opportunities. He really got in like with 2 minutes left in the game, so he didn't really get a lot of opportunities to showcase what he was able to do. But I mean, when he was with the New Orleans Saints a couple of years back, he had some pretty significant numbers and some significant stats to go off with and some significant film tape, but he ultimately wasn't really all that impressive. So I mean, I'm not really shocked that JT Barrett wasn't able to crack the Steelers roster. I still am a little bit disappointed because I really wanted to see what he was going to be able to do in training camp, but ultimately with the ongoing pandemic that's going on and having no preseason, this is what a lot of people were talking about, how preseason wasn't really all that important, but it is important to guys like JT Barrett that are trying to make the roster and basically are the fourth stringer at the quarterback position on the depth chart. So, I mean, a lot of people are talking about how preseason doesn't matter, but it does matter to guys like JT Barrett that we're not really going to get all that many opportunities. And given you got to be able to make the most out of the opportunities that you're presented, but at the end of the day, like, the preseason would have been really important for a guy like JT Barrett that's trying to get some stuff on film, that's trying to make some things happen, and is trying to clinch one of the last roster spots on the roster. But ultimately, without the preseason, JT Barrett really wasn't able to showcase what he was able to do, so he ultimately ended up getting released. And JT Barrett was on the Steelers roster dating back all the way back to 2019 in December. The Pittsburgh Steelers had picked him up. He was brought in to be the scout team quarterback and give the Steelers defense a look because the Steelers were going to end up facing RG3, and they needed a quarterback who could replicate what RG3 was able to do and give them a look. So he was signed all the way back in December. They ended up signing a futures roster deal with the Steelers. So ultimately, JT Barrett wasn't able to crack the Steelers roster. Really disappointed, but I mean, I wish JT Barrett, if you're watching this, I wish you the best of luck. I hope that you get another opportunity to sign for another NFL team and showcase your abilities, because I really think that JT Barrett does have the potential to be a solid backup, at least at the NFL